Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 20 of the EnglishAnyone.com Power Learning Podcast. I'm Drew Badger, the co founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and it is a pleasure to have you with me today. In case, just so you know, I'm in the middle of a typhoon over here in Nagasaki, Japan. So if you hear a little bit of windy noises and any kind of loud things falling, or if I suddenly stop recording this, it's because I was blown away. But hopefully none of that should happen. I'm inside my home, but one of the kind of bitchy things, the difficult and frustrating things about being in Japan is that if you're not using the air conditioner or you don't have air conditioning in a particular room and you've got a lot of rain or something outside, you can't have the windows open. So right now it is a sweltering, crazy humidity. So this is what I do. I do it for you. I love you. I'm sitting here. I'm basically naked, almost. Really, just sitting here and kind of dripping with sweat, but I love you, and that's why I'm making this podcast episode. Anyway, this is a particularly important podcast. I know I say that every time, and I try to make them even more important as they go on, and I produce new episodes of the podcast. But this is something I've been discussing with my Power Learning members a lot recently, and it is the topic of the 6 fluency habits. And this is something you'll be hearing a lot more from me about over the coming weeks and months, as I'm releasing some new guides and some new free video training that will help students understand these concepts a little bit more so that they can get fluent faster. The more I've been thinking about helping people get fluent, there really are lots of different categories of learners. And I have people that are in Master English Conversation or Power Learning. Some of them are very young. One new member, he's like 15 years old, which is amazing. And we have older members who are like over 70 or 80 years old. So there's lots of different reasons why people want to improve their fluency, and lots of different things that each person needs to do in order to get fluent. So that makes my job a bit more difficult, but also a bit more fun, because I can really get into the details of a lot of specific things people need to help kind of improve and work on in order to get fluent. So this idea of the 6 fluency habits that I've been creating and really trying to make into a very clear picture for everyone, it's something that if you're thinking about the things that you're struggling with, it will really help you focus on those specific things, and that's what we'll be talking about in this episode of the Power Learning Podcast. So let's get started with episode 20, but before we get into the actual discussion of these 6 fluency habits, I want to talk about something else that I also was mentioning to my Power Learning members not that long ago. And this is actually a way to think about fluency which is a little bit different from business. And I had just recently sent a mail to Power Learning members where I was talking about this. And I want to make it something for everyone that's a nice, clear idea for everyone to understand about how fluency works. Now, I use a lot of analogies when I speak because I think it's helpful and it's easier to see how one thing works by connecting it with something else. And I also talk about business a lot because there are a lot of parallels or a lot of connections between the way business works and also the way fluency works. And I've actually talked about, I forget which podcast episode it is, but I was talking about building your fluency team. And what this means is that you have to find different people in your circle or people that can teach you or help you improve. And maybe some people will help you remember words better, other people will help you learn new things, or still other people will help you practice. But this is about building your fluency team, and this is exactly what successful businesses do. So actually, if you're on YouTube watching this or you're listening to it, you can go to YouTube and look up the Power Learning Podcast playlist, and you should see one episode about building your fluency team. I highly recommend you watch that and listen to that if you haven't done so already. Now, in talking about building your fluency team, the thing that's important, the analogy there, is really showing how it's kind of like a business, where you have one person that's particularly good at one thing, and then another person that's good at something else, and then this third person that can do yet another thing really well. And then when they come together, all of their strengths come together, and then they can do something really powerful. Now, what's a little bit different about actual fluency is that you are the one speaking. And so, even though you need a fluency team around you to help you learn all of the different things, and again, some teachers are better at teaching vocabulary, other teachers are better at, helping you build confidence or other things like that. But ultimately, you are the one that needs to put all of those pieces together. So even though the kind of learning process can work a lot like a business where you gather a team together, you are the main person that is getting fluent and the one that's actually speaking. So everything comes down to you, and you are kind of the machine that must become fluent. Now, when I was talking about this in a letter recently to Power Learning members, I mentioned a movie star and a person that's an idol for me, or he was anyway when I was a little kid, and this is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I had watched, not that long ago, I was watching it again. This is Pumping Iron, and you can actually find that right here on YouTube if you're watching that. You can just look up Pumping Iron. So this means to work out, to pump iron, like pushing something up and down, to pump it. So in Pumping Iron, there's kind of a small section of that movie, and I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. Arnold has some great quotes in that, like he always does in his movies, but he's really a very clever guy and thinking and responding to people even though English isn't his first language. So that's kind of another interesting reason to watch it. But for this particular thing I'm talking about, Arnold is talking about how he wants to build muscle, but the reason he isn't kind of the best at what he does, or winning Mr. Olympia or other titles that he's won, he's not the biggest or even the tallest person. I mean, he's pretty tall. He's like 6'2", I think. But the reason that he wins is because he has the most proportioned, the most well-proportioned body. And he talks a lot about how some people, maybe they would go into the gym about, trying to work on just one body part and not something else. So they have an imbalanced body, or a body where the proportions are not really aligned properly. They're not working smoothly together, and so you look at that and you can see the imbalance really quickly. Like someone who has really big arms but really like tiny legs, or maybe they've got really strong legs but they've got a really fat stomach or something like that. So all of these things are things that Arnold Schwarzenegger does not want to be. So he is so precise and so particular about this. And when he's mentioning this in the movie, he's only talking about it for a little bit, but it's kind of a theme throughout the movie. So he's only mentioning it specifically for a little bit. But what he says is that if you want to increase, or if he wants to increase one particular muscle, he has to think about how that affects all of the other muscles in his body. Now, why this is important for English learners, and this is exactly what I mentioned in my letter to Power Learning members not that long ago, is that if you want to become a fluent speaker, what people are really listening to is the balance that you have. Now, a lot of people, they may know a lot of words, but if they can't use grammar properly, or they don't actually know how to speak in continuous sentences, then those are the things that really stick out. And to stick out means to be obvious, or to be something that's really clear. So it's really obvious to people, especially native speakers that are listening, and they wonder why someone knows all of this difficult or advanced vocabulary, but they can't connect sentences properly, or they can't actually use the grammar properly, even though they know probably more grammar than most native speakers. So again, what's interesting here is that most people think about developing particular skills in fluency, but they forget to look at the whole picture. So even though you want to, again, build a fluency team of all of the people that are around you that can really help you get fluent, so you can find, again, the best person that can help you with vocabulary and someone that can help you with grammar, something like that. Ultimately, you are the machine, and if you don't have all of the pieces working properly in that machine will not function properly. And again, that's why so many students feel embarrassed or shy, or they don't want to speak. It's because really there's an imbalance in their fluency. And I really want students to think about this. So if you are struggling and you have problems speaking, and and it could be one or two things that you feel are really holding you back, and this is even a specific thing for a specific learner. So it could be maybe your grammar is weak, or your ability to connect sentences is weak. It could be anything like that, but you will probably have a really strong idea about what that is. If you don't, then really take some time and think about that, because again, focusing on what you're strong with will not be the same kind of thing in business that it is when you're trying to learn fluency. Now, there are many fantastic and famous CEOs. These are the chief executive officers of a company. Some people maybe you know that are really good at sales, but they're really bad at product design. Or they really like designing products, but they're really bad at marketing. Now, this works in business if they can have other people on their team that are also helpful and then can support and complement them with the strengths of, the other person. But in fluency, again, I want to tell you about this over and over again because it's such an important idea to remember. You want to have balance, and so it makes more sense to work on the things that you're weak with than it does to make sense to work on your kind of things that you're stronger with. So if you really are good at memorizing vocabulary, stop memorizing vocabulary and start working on something that you have trouble with. It might be difficult at first, but usually, depending on the way you learn something, it's probably quite easy to fix that and then start to build that up, and that's what really is going to build your confidence again. Remember that your confidence doesn't come from knowing a lot of words. It comes from being able to use what you know confidently and spontaneously in conversations, being able to speak continuously, all of these things that come together to make a complete picture. In the mail that I was sending to people, again, along with Schwarzenegger, I believe, I was talking about a baby. Now, a baby is balanced in the same way. Even though it can't speak very well, it's speaking in very, very short sentences, and the pronunciation of that baby is probably not very good, and it probably doesn't know very many words. But when we look at the baby, that's what we expect. We look at the baby and we understand that it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be limited in various areas, but it's all balanced in that way. And as a child grows up, as that baby becomes a teenager, an adult, all of the skills of that baby are growing at the same time. Now, they may have, one particular thing, like they become a good reader or a good speaker or something like that. But in general, for the purposes of conversations every day with regular people, they are able to do that just fine. And that's the skill that I want you to have. I want you to have a balanced way of improving your English so that you're not feeling weak in one area and strong in another. I want you to be able to begin with basic conversations and be able to have them confidently without, embarrassing or annoying pauses or frustrating gaps in your speech while you have to think about what you want to say. You should really be beginning with the things that are struggling or the things that are most difficult for you, and then you can take that, and once you've built that foundation that's balanced, you can start improving individual skills and start putting them together. So you should be building fluency in the same way that Arnold Schwarzenegger builds muscle. You need to be thinking about how learning 10 new words is going to sound a little bit funny if you don't also learn the good pronunciation of those, or how to connect them with other things. I don't know how many conversations I've had with people, many Japanese speakers that are also learning English, that they'll know some really interesting words and they sound really great, but they don't have a basic understanding of how grammar works, and they're not able to use it, confidently. And that's why they speak in very short sentences. It could be a few phrases or maybe even just one sentence, and they're not able to speak and express themselves confidently. Now, this is nothing specifically about Japan. This is learners all over the world that I've worked with and spoken with. So it's a very common problem, and that's because a lot of people kind of focus on a few particular things about fluency but don't really think about the whole picture. Okay, now that idea is pretty clear, that you should be focusing on balancing the different pieces of fluency, the different habits, I want to talk about what I call the 6 fluency habits and really explain and flesh out, or to give more details about these ones kind of individually, and then we'll talk about combining them together. Now, what's interesting about teaching people to become fluent is that it's not a linear process, and this means a line. So you have a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, because it's more of a combination lock where you want to line up all of the different fluency skills and kind of learn all of them together. And they are connected to one another, incidentally. But you want to learn all of them together so that they line up perfectly, and then you have fluent speech that you can communicate nice and easily and confidently and be able to speak and respond to people spontaneously. So instead of thinking about having to learn something in a particular order, even though I will give you the 6 fluency habits in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 order because that's easy to do, I don't want you to think about one having more importance than the other, because all of them, as you improve each individual skill, your overall fluency becomes even stronger. So let's go through all of these individually, but just keep in mind that all of these things should be worked on in tandem. All of them should be worked on together continuously so that you improve one thing, maybe move on to the next, and then come back to that previous one. So let's get into the 6 fluency habits. The first one is understanding. And I give this one first because obviously if you don't understand what you're listening to, you're not going to either learn anything or be able to respond to anything. And there are 3 basic areas of understanding that you can really focus on improving. And again, I'm working on guides. One will be specifically about this, and then there will be guides for the other fluency habits as well. But this one is specifically about understanding. Now, the 3 different parts of this, and there are many more, but the 3 major ones are being able to understand fast native speakers, being able to understand the difficult accents of native speakers, and then being able to understand the native English vocabulary. Now, I won't go into a whole bunch of detail here. Again, I'd like to just kind of list these out. And if you hear anything that maybe it's something you're struggling with, like, the fast native speakers, that's a difficult one for me, or, I have trouble listening to accents, or I don't understand the words that they're using. You can think about these things, and that's where you should begin to focus your attention on improving. So remember, listen to the kind of things that I'm telling you now, and then you can go into how to improve them so you can get fluent faster. Each one of these things, for being able to understand native speakers, at the heart, it really begins with how you learn the actual language. So if you're listening to things in textbooks and listening practice CDs, then that's going to give you a listening practice CD and textbook form of English. And so it's going to teach you the formal English appropriate for writing, and it will not prepare you to understand all of the native speakers and how they speak and the words they use and their accents and their speed. So just as a kind of basic idea for now, before I get into more details later in guides and extra video lessons and classes and things like that, if you're struggling to understand native speakers, at the heart of that, it's how you study. You really need to be listening to more native content, and you should begin with the content that's most easiest for you to understand. So think about it could be something as basic as Sesame Street or some other kids show, but find something that's easy for you to listen to and that you can enjoy listening to and that you understand at least 80 to 90% of. That way you'll be able to learn new things nice and easily, but also you'll improve your pronunciation and your listening as well. The next fluency habit is being understood. Now, this can come in many different forms. It could be how you speak and the words you use. It could be if you're able to speak naturally the way native speakers are, or if you have, gaps and pauses in the way you speak. It could be whether you're using the right words when you speak, and often this happens to students. They'll use words that are maybe too formal for the situation or too impolite, or they actually just don't know what word is appropriate for the situation. Or it could be something as simple as making a lot of grammar mistakes. But getting back to the being understood part, again, being understood and understanding, which was the first fluency habit, both of these they're really the same habit. They're really interconnected. And as you learn more native content. That's what's really going to help you become a much better speaker. So again, I won't get into so much detail about this here. There's just too much to talk about, and it would take up many podcast episodes actually to flesh out or to describe all of the information in this, and that's why I'm making these guides again that will be released in the future. But for now, just think about these things and write down or try to remember what it is that maybe you're struggling with, so that you can come back after this is finished and begin thinking about ways that you can improve, whatever that skill happens to be. The next fluency habit is pronunciation, and this could be reducing your accent or just improving certain sounds in your pronunciation, or if you're really excited about wanting to improve your fluency, it could be wanting to sound like a native speaker. Bearing in mind that there are many different kinds of native speakers, and even if you pick a particular country like England or the United States, you're going to find many different accents and dialects within a particular country. So it depends really on the people you're working with, especially if you're living in an English-speaking country. You want to focus on the English of that kind of person or the people around you, and that way, at least for the beginning part, you can have something to start working with, and then after that, after you've learned the dialect and the accent of the people you're speaking with that live around you, then you can move on to more difficult things and broaden your ability to understand native speakers. Now, I'll be releasing more information about this, pronunciation specifically, and how you can use sound transitioning, which is a technique I use to help students sound more like native English speakers and improve their pronunciation much faster, and I will be talking more about that in a guide coming up. The next fluency habit is vocabulary and grammar. And in this habit, we have things like being able to build a vocabulary, a large active vocabulary, being able to remember words, not make grammar mistakes. All of these things come together, and again, I don't want to go into too much detail because I'll be talking more about this in guides. I know I keep saying this over and over again. I really just want to give kind of an introduction to things here so people can, if they feel like they're having trouble with particular things. I know when I'm thinking about something, sometimes I need someone on the outside to remind me and give me options. So that's really what this podcast is about, just kind of letting people know the specific areas of fluency that they should be working on, and then the specific categories within that. So each fluency habit has a couple of different things inside of it that you can use and really focus on, so that way you'll know what you need to improve in order to get fluent faster. The fifth fluency habit is being able to express yourself fluently. Now, this is the thing that most students have problems with, so I really want to talk about this one a bit at length right here in the podcast. Now, this could be something as being able to speak continuously, or you want to be able to express yourself, or you want to be able to speak and respond automatically. Now, these are things that really take time, and they really come with speaking. And it could be speaking to yourself, or it could be speaking with other people, but these are the things that you can't develop with a textbook. So a textbook maybe can help you learn a few new words and phrases, but really you should be using a lot of native content to get information from people about what's really being spoken. So listening to again, something for your level. It could be a television show for children or a movie or anything else like that, but it should be something you understand most of already. Now, to build fluency, you really need to start with the basics, and this is mastering the phrases that we use. And again, you're learning those from the TV shows or the other native content that you're learning. So you're learning how to blend them together so that you improve your pronunciation, but also so you can remember them a little bit more easily and use them more confidently when you speak. As you begin learning phrases, what you'll begin doing is starting to connect these, and I'll be explaining again in a guide coming up how to do this more, but using sentence connectors to help you take one idea and connect it to another idea. So let's say I'm having a conversation, and somebody mentions a dog. Now I can have a connection to that one by talking about a time I used to walk dogs as a child or something like that. So I'm always thinking about how I can make a connection between what's being spoken or what I'm looking at or what I'm watching and something else in my life, or I can even just talk more about connections to that particular thing. And it's just a process of taking what native fluent English speakers, and these are even young children, do. They're taking information, they're copying it, and then they're repeating it over and over again, and then they're trying to use that same information in other situations, just like you'll hear a quote from one movie appear in another movie in a similar situation. It's all the same kind of thing. And you have to get out of the textbook. You have to begin, especially writing will do a great job for this, but speaking in particular, and using connections between things. And again, I'll be talking more about this in the upcoming guide. But if these are problems that you have, the actual getting fluent part, the actual being able to speak, it really comes down to practice, and it's just kind of how you practice that makes a big difference about that. So one thing I'm talking about actually in a guide coming up is how you can use sentence connectors, where really you're taking different pieces of information and then it's kind of an exercise of imagining what's happening in the past or the future, or thinking about that situation such that, I could look at, like, let's say I'm sitting in this room right now and there's a picture of some dogs playing pool up on the wall. Now I could look at that and describe the picture itself, or I could describe my own dogs, or I could talk about the time I played pool when I was in school, or something like that. But after I look at these things and I'm walking around and I'm watching movies as well, and I'm asking questions about why the character did this or what they'll do in the future or how I feel about that or what the characters feel, as you begin asking yourself these questions, it will become more obvious and your brain will begin generating answers to these questions automatically, so that when you're in conversations and things happen and people ask you, oh, what do you think about that? Then you're immediately able to respond more quickly and then be able to connect things and be talking more about that. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail here in this podcast about that, just because there's so much I'd like to share and there's just not enough time to be able to do it now, but I will be going into it more in length, again, in the upcoming guides and the new video training I'll be releasing as well. And finally, the last fluency habit is mindset. Now, this is your inner game. These are the things that go on inside your head. This is your psychology. This is whether you feel shy or confident. This is whether you actually have motivation to study or you're not very motivated to study. All of these things are what kind of underpin, or they are underneath all of the other fluency habits, and they work well by accentuating that or stopping you from wanting to speak if you're just not feeling very confident. Now, some English learners are actually really great speakers, but they're just shy. Other people are shy because they can't speak. So there's lots of different people that have different particular problems. And again, if you go back and listen to all of these things, all of the different fluency habits, then you can figure out what precisely you need to work on in order to get fluent faster. But all of these things, again, I'll be talking about these more in guides. But again, the big idea that I want you to take away from this podcast is the kind of lost fluency habit, and this is the 7th habit, and this is that you need to balance all of these things together. So remember, just like Arnold, you are a machine. You really need to figure out what holes you need to plug or what things you are weak at so that you can fix those and then really start building your confidence. Because you're going to lose more confidence and you're going to want to speak less because of the things that you're bad at. And again, this is just part of, again, that inner game, that psychology of how we work. We get much more depressed and sad about a little thing like losing $5 than we get excited about gaining $5. So if you want to really build your confidence, you're going to do that faster by improving your weaknesses than you will by improving your strengths. And then after you improve your weaknesses, you'll be able to, again, all of these things are working in concert, and this means together, so that you can improve everything and then really go on to become a great speaker quickly. So if you enjoyed listening to this, you're really going to enjoy all of the new guides that I'm releasing very soon. I'm working hard, getting lots of great information from learners about that. But if you're also really excited to start learning now, you can also learn a lot about all of these and how to start improving each individual fluency skill and fluency habit with Master English Conversation. If you are not yet a member, I highly recommend you check out the program. It will help you develop all of these, your understanding, being able to be understood, pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, and being able to express yourself fluently and confidently. So all of these things, if you're really excited, if you enjoy the way I teach, you can click on the link right here on YouTube and you can come to EnglishAnyone.com and learn more about Master English Conversation. But however you decide to learn, I highly recommend you focus on your weaknesses and really start improving those so that you can create a full package of a confident, fluent speaker. Well, that's it for this episode of the Power Learning Podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you're listening to this on EnglishAnyone.com or if you're watching this on YouTube, either way, if you've got questions, let me know. And I look forward to talking with you soon. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.